Red meat has been back in the cultural conversation lately, partly due to shifting dietary trends and partly due to ongoing debates about what the research actually says. But whatever the cultural moment, the underlying biology has not changed. Regularly eating red meat, particularly fatty cuts and processed varieties, has measurable effects on cholesterol levels, and those effects carry real cardiovascular consequences. To understand what is actually happening in the body when red meat becomes a dietary staple, we turn to cardiologist Dr. Lavie, physician researcher Dr. Wenjun Fan of UC Irvine School of Public Health, and registered dietitian Michelle Routhenstein, a specialist in cardiology nutrition. The picture that emerges is more nuanced than a simple prohibition on steak. Individual genetics, cut selection, portion size, and the broader dietary context all shape how significantly red meat affects a given person's cholesterol profile. But the mechanisms through which regular red meat consumption raises cardiovascular risk are well established and worth understanding clearly. The saturated fat and LDL connection. The primary pathway through which red meat affects cholesterol runs through saturated fat. Many cuts of red meat are high in saturated fat, and high saturated fat intake disrupts how the liver manages LDL cholesterol, the lipoprotein most directly linked to plaque formation in arteries. Dr. Fan explains the mechanism specifically. Saturated fat downregulates LDL receptor activity in the liver, meaning the liver becomes less efficient at pulling LDL particles out of circulation. The result is that LDL accumulates in the bloodstream at higher concentrations than it otherwise would. Diets high in red meat also tend to increase LDL particle number and ApoB concentrations, both of which are considered stronger predictors of heart disease risk than LDL cholesterol alone. Once LDL particles are circulating at elevated levels, they carry cholesterol directly into arterial walls, initiating and accelerating the process of plaque formation. Research consistently shows that LDL levels at or above 130 milligrams per deciliter are associated with meaningfully higher cardiovascular disease risk. Routhenstein adds that population studies consistently link higher intake of red meat, and especially processed red meat, with elevated cholesterol, systemic inflammation, and increased risk of heart disease overall. Processed meats carry an additional layer of risk beyond saturated fat. Bacon, salami, hot dogs, and similar products typically contain high sodium and nitrite preservatives that can raise blood pressure and damage blood vessel walls independently of their fat content, creating compounding pathways to plaque buildup and cardiovascular disease. The gut microbiome pathway, TMAO. A second, less widely known mechanism runs through the gut microbiome. Red meat contains carnitine, a compound that gut bacteria metabolize into trimethylamine, which the liver then converts into trimethylamine N-oxide, or TMAO. Elevated TMAO levels have been shown to interfere with normal cholesterol transport and are associated with stiffer, less flexible arteries. Research also links higher TMAO levels to elevated risk of cardiovascular conditions, including heart failure, and scientists increasingly view TMAO as a potential early marker of cardiovascular risk, one that reflects the gut-heart connection that becomes more apparent with regular red meat consumption. This pathway is distinct from the saturated fat mechanism and operates even in people whose LDL response to dietary fat is relatively modest. Why genetics change the calculus? Not everyone who eats the same amount of red meat experiences the same cholesterol response, and genetics explain a significant part of that variability. Research shows that the amount of dietary cholesterol the body actually absorbs from foods like red meat ranges from roughly 29% to 80%, depending on individual genetic differences. For someone at the lower end of that range, the same portion of red meat creates a much smaller blood cholesterol impact than it does for someone at the higher end. Dr. Lavie highlights another dimension of this variability. For someone with diabetes, insulin resistance, or elevated triglycerides, moderate portions of lean red meat may actually improve lipid profiles compared to their previous diet, particularly if it means replacing refined carbohydrates or sweets rather than displacing fish, legumes, or other heart-healthier protein sources. This does not mean red meat is neutral for these groups, but it does illustrate that context determines impact. The relevant comparison is always between red meat and what it is replacing in the diet, not between red meat and a theoretical ideal. Fat content and portion size matter more than most people realize. Even for people who choose to keep red meat in their diet, the specific cut and portion size make a substantial difference. Lean cuts, those with minimal visible fat, often labeled as choice or select, carry meaningfully less saturated fat than fattier alternatives. For ground beef, options with no more than 15% fat content represent a lower risk choice than standard ground beef. Portion sizes of approximately 3 to 4 ounces per serving, rather than the 8 or 12-ounce portions common in restaurant settings, also reduce saturated fat load considerably. Trimming visible fat before cooking is another practical step that reduces intake without eliminating the food entirely. Habits that support healthy cholesterol alongside red meat. For those who enjoy red meat and choose to keep it as a regular part of their diet, several complementary habits can meaningfully counterbalance its cholesterol effects. Swapping saturated fat sources for unsaturated fat sources where possible, replacing butter with olive oil, and substituting fatty fish like salmon for red meat 2 or more times per week directly supports more favorable LDL profiles. Dr. Fan recommends increasing plant-forward foods, including legumes, nuts, fruits, vegetables, and complex carbohydrates, all of which increase soluble fiber intake. Soluble fiber is among the most well-supported dietary tools for lowering LDL cholesterol, working by reducing the amount of cholesterol the gut absorbs from food in the first place. Routhenstein also points to breakfast composition as an underappreciated lever. Starting the day with a balanced meal that includes protein, healthy fats, and complex carbohydrates helps regulate blood sugar and metabolism in ways that reduce post-meal spikes in both LDL and triglycerides, effects that accumulate meaningfully over time. Regular physical exercise benefits the cholesterol picture from a different angle. Exercise enhances HDL function, the so-called good cholesterol, which helps the body process and excrete LDL more efficiently. None of these habits eliminates the cholesterol effects of regular red meat consumption entirely, but they represent the kind of integrated approach that can keep cardiovascular risk manageable for people who are not prepared or willing to remove red meat from their diet altogether. Understanding the mechanisms, the saturated fat pathway, the TMAO pathway, and the genetic variation in cholesterol absorption provides a foundation for making more informed decisions about how often, how much, and in what context red meat fits into a diet oriented toward long-term